there was a lot of allegations that hinted to the fact that at least the United States knew or should have known that the life of Mr. Khashoggi was at risk. That allegations is based on leaks produced by various newspapers and seemingly originating from the CIA. I could not substantiate the leaks. I could not reach the conclusion that the leaks were amounted to credible evidence. For that reasons, I concluded that the United States may not have failed in its responsibility to protect and to warn Mr. Khashoggi. This being said, I did raise a couple of concerns. It seems improbable to me that intercept originating from Mr. The Crown Prince would not have been analyzed, particularly if they included some trigger words such as a bullet, for instance. I find it hard to believe that such an intercept would not have been analyzed at the time it was intercepted. But I do not have any evidence that it was intercepted and that it was analyzed at the time.
You asked for the FBI to launch an investigation, which they haven't already. What do you think would come out of that investigation? Is it clarifying?
Absolutely. I think the United States has a stake into what happened to Mr. Khashoggi. He was a resident of the United States. He was a known and renowned member of the press corps. He worked for the Washington Post. He was therefore, he embodied the First Amendment in many ways. So for those reasons, I believe the United States has a stake into determining what happened to him, determining whether any institutions, any governmental entities within the United States government was aware of any kind of risk, and determining more generally the scale and the scope of responsibilities of the various states involved, in the first place Saudi Arabia.
Could I follow up? Sorry. You mentioned that you have credible evidence that there's no guilt associated with the Crown Prince. However, if I remember reading your report correctly, you do mention that the Crown Prince may have had a hand in the cover-up following, covering a hiding of evidence. Can you elaborate on that?
So my report distinguished between the commission of the crime and what happened after the crimes. With regard to the commission of the crime, I am certainly suggesting that I do not have evidence as to who ordered the crime. So that's one thing. In the follow-up, as a follow-up to the crime, there were arranged a number of steps taken by Saudi Arabia. They sent, I believe, some 17 officials to Turkey to investigate the crimes. They were present on their own in the crime scenes for almost 10 days. During that period, there is credible evidence, again, that the crime scene was not only investigated but was also cleaned, forensically cleaned, so that by the time the Turkish investigators were able to enter the consulate, they found basically close to very little, and they themselves have highlighted the possibility that many evidence had been cleaned. So that, to me, the cleaning of the crime scene demonstrate that the investigation was not done in good faith, first. Two, that the principle of international cooperation for a crime of this nature, for an international crime of this nature, was not met. And thirdly, that the highest level of the state must have known that the crime scene was being tampered with. So for that reason, I do point to the fact that the responsibilities of the highest level of the government, including presumably the Crown Prince, is involved in what amount to tampering with the crime scene.
So I can ask you what reactions you received if you could threats or to feel fearful of your safety in such a strong report?
I hope and I believe that the work I have done is in keeping with the mandate that the international community has attributed to me. My report, I think, is fair. It is very technical. It is very legal. It is offering a human rights reading of the execution of Mr. Khashoggi. It is also seeking to offer a way for the international community, for Saudi Arabia, for the United Nations to learn and to move with stronger instruments to tackle other targeted killings in the future. All of those things in an impartial way and in good faith, and I trust that all the individuals and the governments concerned will understand that this was the process and the outcome.
You haven't faced any intimidation in any way?
No.
What is the next step?
In terms of following up on the call to the FBI to investigate, do you have concerns that at a political level, the Crown Prince enjoys great political protection and a friendship with the son-in-law of President Trump that might hinder any meaningful investigation?
No. I am not worried about this. This is not really part of my work, my mandate, and I believe that the institution of justice in the United States remain independent and impartial, and if there is a call, a valid and credible call, they will proceed with an investigation.
What is your call to, what are the next steps, and what is your call to the UN Security Council, to the Secretary General, the Human Rights Council? What is your call?
Okay, so my report makes a range of recommendations, including to the United Nations, various bodies. As far as the Secretary General is concerned, I am suggesting that he proceeds with appointing a panel of experts to undertake an international criminal inquiry into the killing, something I haven't done. With regard to the Security Council, I'm only suggesting at this point that they place the execution of Mr. Khashoggi and more generally the targeted killings or the targeted disappearances of dissenters, of journalists, as an area formula discussion so that they can extract the implications for their own functions. I have a number of recommendations for member states in general, including the most important one in my view is to take stock of the fact that we are living or entering a world where the peace and security are under threat in many parts of the world, and one element of it is the targeting of those that are considered to be taking position that some governments are disagreeing with. It is incumbent upon the member states to take all the necessary actions to protect those individuals. We need those individuals. They are the ones providing information to you, journalists, to me, to the international community. I'm calling on the international, on member states around the world to ensure that they abide by their responsibility to protect, and particularly focusing on those that have sought safety on their territories.
Thank you very much. One last one. You want the last one? What is the benchmark of success for international jurisprudence in this case? I mean, in other words, does somebody need to go to trial and be convicted, and a certain number of people need to be convicted? I mean, what would you say at the end of the day to be satisfied?
Absolutely. As an international independent expert into that issue, I do want to highlight and call for a judicial process, a meaningful judicial process. I am, however, aware of the context, and I also believe that accountability can take many shapes. Accountability can be driven by politics. Accountability can be the result of diplomacy. So I think the benchmark, first of all, resides in the sense that justice has been delivered, whether it's a formal judicial steps or whether it is a realization, both in Saudi Arabia and outside Saudi Arabia, that this execution was the first and the last that they have committed, that the state of Saudi Arabia has committed. To me, I didn't know Mr. Khashoggi. I believe that he will take great hope in the fact that his execution will never be repeated, including by the state of Saudi Arabia, to which he was so attached.
On va descendre.
Ah, d'accord, je vais juste prendre mon eau.
Elle est juste là. Thanks, guys.